Welcome in, latest episode of that SEC podcast. I'm your host, Michael Bratton. Go by SEC Mike on the Twitters, and there he is, our great friend Steven Lassan, the senior editor over at Athlon Sports. Steven, how are you, my friend?
Mike, I am still basking, I guess, in all the playoff news, the bowl announcements. Proud to say we both met before the show and decided we are not opting out tonight. So it is great, as always, to be with the cousins and all of the college football fans. Right, Mike?
Yeah, and if there was a committee for best guest, host, whatever you want to call yourself on this show, Steven, I put you in the field. We ain't Notre Dame and you, buddy. You would get a bye, trust me.
I've played a tough schedule. Do it with the predictions every week. We do our Monday show, the panic meter. We've navigated a lot this season. So, strength of schedule's on my side. I think I could have made some better predictions this year, Mike, but we all make mistakes, right? They get a chance to prove ourselves in the playoff chase down in the bowl season, right?
Yeah, no doubt. And congrats to you. I don't have the updated, but you and JP just both went with Georgia to win last week. Shane and I, of course, wrong again, went with Alabama. So you guys just extended your lead. So you and the cousins remain. We may have to pick playoff games to break his tiebreaker. But going into the playoffs, Steven and the cousins, just the elite at picking these games. So yeah, once again, if we were giving awards to best pickers, it'd be you guys. Worst pickers, that'd be me and Shane. You know what?
Are we going to pick the bowl games too? Wait, we've even got one extra SEC bowl team, Mississippi State, getting in there, Mike.
Yeah, we might have to, just to give Shane one final opportunity to close the gap. But we all know he'll fall even further behind. You know what?
Can we get Shane to pick the bowl games outside of the SEC, like Louisiana and Delaware playing Troy, Jacksonville State? I'd love to hear his reasoning to pick those games, Mike, because with some of these opt-outs and the timing on some of these games, I got a feeling that his explanations might be just as good as my hardcore, analysis on Delaware's offense playing Louisiana's defense, right?
I think so. So hey, we're gonna get into it. We got reaction SEC championship. We've got playoff thoughts from Mr. Steven Lassan, and we're gonna go all around all kinds of coaching news in the SEC. A lot has happened since we've last spoke to Steven, and then we're going to close it out with our SEC awards. And there's going to be a lot of these awards are kind of what you'd expect, but I try to throw a lot of curveballs at Steven too. So you're not going to see another SEC award show quite like this one. But before we get into all that, always got to remind the cousins, Steven, that we are brought to you by MyBookie this football season. I know the regular season anyway, has come to an end, but there's still plenty of time. Bowl games, playoff games. There's NFL, there's NBA, there's all the sports. They got you covered over at MyBookie. So go check them out. And most importantly, don't forget that promo code SEC over at MyBookie. And Shane and I, we're trying not to drink anymore because we drink way too much. But when we break it here in about probably 3 hours, we're going to go over and drink it with some Tennessee Legend because they're the official spirit of that SEC podcast. And without them, Steven, maybe it's not great for making picks, but it's good at laughing at yourself when you get them all wrong. You know what?
I think so, Mike. I think it's if you can't get the games right, you at least got to have some fun with our friends over at Tennessee Legends. What has you tipping into that Tennessee Legends bottle the most this weekend? Because the SEC got the 5 teams in the playoff, pretty good bowl slate. Anything causing you to drink for the SEC these days?
Yes, Tim Banks got fired, so we're celebrating with some Tennessee Legend, but we'll get to that here in a minute. I want to get all your thoughts on that, Steven, but let's start in order here. Let's go to the SEC championship where Georgia just absolutely walloped old Alabama, finally breaking over that Bama hex that was over them dogs. How surprised were you? I know you picked Georgia to win this game, but how surprised were you that it was this lopsided?
Mike, I think that's my first takeaway on this game. I was not surprised that Georgia won, and certainly given the series, or I guess I'd say Kirby Smart's record and the way the first game played out, I thought we would see a much closer game than the way it played out. I figured this would be a game that went down to the wire. But Mike, we saw a couple things here, and I think it was kind of the continuation of what we saw kind of almost at the end of the regular season. Putting the Georgia Tech game aside, it feels like Georgia is trending up, and it kind of feels like Alabama is kind of trending in the wrong direction. And we've seen that especially on the offensive side. So I think that game kind of encapsulated what we saw in the last few weeks of the season. Georgia feeling like they're putting it together. They put it together over those last stretch of games, and it turned into a really dominant performance on Saturday. So not surprised they won, just really surprised that the outcome was so convincing in Georgia's favor.
Yeah. And you make an excellent point that right now, I don't want to skip too ahead, but again, it's almost like the SEC championship has lost so much luster. Is Georgia the team to beat, you think, when it comes to SEC contenders in the college football playoff?
I do, Mike. I think Georgia has an excellent chance to win it all. The one downside is they got Ohio State on that side of the bracket. They also got Miami and Texas A&M, who I think are going to be pretty formidable. I think they got the tougher draw. Like if you compare the two sides of the bracket, Indiana, Alabama, Oklahoma, Oregon, Texas Tech feels a lot more gettable. Whereas if you got to go through Ohio State and some of these others, it's kind of tough. But I do think in the big picture, if you gave me $100 and say, put it on one team from the SEC to win the national championship, I think it's got to be Georgia. Just the way they're playing, defense has really kind of come together down the stretch. Love the way Gunnar Stockton's playing, the efficiency, the timely plays. He makes them when they need them. And also, losing Drew Bobo, having a week to reorganize up front, like the way that offensive line for Georgia responded. So, Mike, I really think this Georgia team is peaking at the right time as we go into the college football playoff.
I think you're right. And shout out Steven All Day Trey gave us $5. He says, hey, Steven, he might love them Longhorns, but he's a dog at heart. Love the cousins. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you, All Day Trey.
Shout out to Trey. I actually only root for two teams, the Pittsburgh Pirates, and they suck, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. So and I guess my alma mater, Austin P. I got to root for them, right? But yeah, you're right, man. What a big win for the Dogs on Saturday.
Yeah, and then Austin P. They played Georgia this year. Remember?
They did. Yeah,
and it was. It wasn't that close. 28-6. Yeah, I mean, it was closer than I thought.
Kept it closer than Alabama.
Was that the best game Boston's Peas played all year? I literally don't know.
Yeah, I mean, hey, like I said, they kept it closer than I guess 28-7, 28-6, 22, 21, 2 points. So not bad. Yeah, that's probably one of the highlights of the season for the Governors. They just missed the FCS playoff.
Maybe next year, Steven. You know what?
Yeah, maybe next year. It's always next year, right?
But hey, speaking of that, so you said Bama fading a little bit, it seems like. What about them going to Oklahoma? What's your early read on that game?
Mike, I thought it was pretty interesting. I think the first spread, correct me if I'm wrong, was Alabama favored in the first spread?
Yeah, by 1.5 is what I saw.
Yeah, I do wonder, and I'm a little undecided on where I think I'm going to fall in this game. But I do wonder if a lot of people are going to automatically pick Oklahoma and might overlook what happened in the first game where Alabama almost outgained them by almost 200 yards, but really made a lot of mistakes. And I'm not saying that Oklahoma was lucky, but I think the kind of big picture thought is points are going to be at a premium in this one. And I think if you're Alabama, you go, we have been playing some questionable ball down the stretch, but this one is gettable. We played these guys close the first time. If Ty Simpson could get back on track, Alabama's defense is probably going to do a pretty good job against Oklahoma. You got to think that, okay, if you're Ty Simpson and you're Ryan Williams, like we just need a couple big plays here. Certainly it's going to be challenging on the road and against that Oklahoma defense, but they have been trending in the wrong direction. But this matchup is also, considering they played once, they outgained them. They had some bad mistakes in that game. If they can correct some of those things, it wouldn't stun me if Alabama kind of met the Vegas expectation there and won the game.
Yeah. I mean, is there in a world, could you say Oklahoma's fading a little bit too?
I think fading might be a little bit strong, Mike. I think maybe the question or maybe the right word is offensively, it's still a struggle. I
Right.
think we know that this defense will travel, and this defense can cause a lot of teams problems in the playoff. If they beat Alabama, obviously the path is only going to get tougher from here. Defense gives them a chance to hang in every game. I think what's concerning is like it's much like Alabama. The offense just hasn't found that spark down the stretch. And certainly they've been searching with running back injuries. The offensive line's been kind of a focal point. Mateer's been banged up. And that's kind of why I wonder they have 20 something days from the LSU game to the Alabama game. Does Mateer get healthier? Do they have a chance to self scout? Do they have a chance to correct some things? That time could be really valuable for that staff to take a step back and say, okay, here's what we're doing. It's not working. What can we change? Like, this is a pretty good time. You see this like a lot of times in bowl games and playoff, different kind of wrinkles you can throw out there. So I think maybe if I'm an Oklahoma fan, that's my biggest reason for optimism is, hey, defense is set. Maybe you get our Mason Thomas back, but you get a couple weeks to figure some things out offensively, and maybe you find a spark. Considering how the first game played out, they don't have to score 30 points. They might just need 25 or so again to win this game.
Yeah, no, I think it's super easy to sit here, Steven, and pick apart all these teams, even though I just literally did it and said, is this team fading? Is that team fading? But again, we're talking about the best of the best.
Yeah.
And they may not have week in, week out played their best football, but who has? And the fact remains they're winning. Oklahoma's winning despite turnovers, despite at times not looking good on offense, yet they're winning. So what does that tell you about the rest of their football team? I think it should tell you that they're elite on defense and outstanding on special teams, and coaching is a high point for them. And I guess the point I'm trying to get to is I think you could pick something on all these teams and be like, well, this isn't that great. Well, this isn't that great, but they're the ones that are coming out on top. They're the ones getting it done. I don't think any of these teams don't deserve to be in the playoff, except maybe JMU and Tulane. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about these SEC teams.
Mike, I 100% agree with you. And I think I hope that when we talk about these games and try to be like picking apart this game or others, it's like you have reached the final destination of the season. You are down to the final 12 teams. There's just X amount of games left. And all these small things could really matter. It's one shot. It's 60 minutes and it's over. You go home if you lose. If you win, you keep it, you keep advancing through the bracket. So I think with the small things for Oklahoma's offense, we bring that up because they could beat Alabama with the way they're playing. I think realistically, if you start looking at the bracket and go, okay, if you do win this game, Indiana is going to be better offensively than Alabama is. Indiana just beat Ohio State. That was a really impressive win on Saturday. So if you want to go beyond just Alabama, you got to figure this out and try to figure something out offensively and be better. In the big picture, Mike, I think you're 100% right when we say we're kind of just picking apart these teams because they're under the microscope. We've reached that final stretch of the season. And so if they haven't solved these things, it's going to catch up to them, and it could catch up to Oklahoma if they haven't fixed some of these offensive issues against Alabama.
Hey, shout out. Howdy, so I'm off. SEC Mike, did you watch Paul Feinbaum today? You got a great compliment. He said you're one of his favorite people and wishes you would come on the show on a regular basis, talk about Lane Witten. That was hilarious. No, I haven't watched Feinbaum today, but I will go back and watch it. So thanks for letting me know. And yeah, we're always very appreciative. Paul's done a lot behind the scenes to help us. So very, very appreciative of him. Shin, we appreciate you, buddy. So if Steve had to put $100 on an SEC team to win it all, it'd be Georgia. Where does your $100 fall for the entire field? Indiana may not have the most talent, but I feel they have the most complete team. They're my bet. What's your thoughts on that, Stephen?
I think if I had to give you an early playoff winner, it'd probably be whoever wins that Ohio State-Georgia game. I think Indiana was very impressive on Saturday. Also very impressive. They went up to Oregon and won a few weeks ago too. But I think you bring up a good point about Indiana. The question about this team last year was like line of scrimmage, and their defense was a lot better last year too. They just shut down Ohio State. Now, Ohio State made some mistakes in that game that caught up to them, missing a field goal, not scoring in the red zone, like small things like that. But Indiana's offense is legit. Their defense is good. And, for the most part, their special teams has been too. So I think they are very complete. But I think when I think about the playoff and matchups, I think it's going to be hard for Indiana to beat Ohio State twice. And I think if Georgia gets past Ohio State, to me, that tells me they're going to win the national championship. So I kind of like Ohio State or Georgia. Indiana's probably third in that discussion, but I think those top three are a cut above. Not much separation among those three, and then those three are a cut above everybody else right now.
So Oklahoma's beating them. Got it. Yeah.
Hey, Oklahoma in the Rose Bowl against Indiana?
Ooh, now we're talking. You know what?
What a great scene that's going to be. Of course, Oklahoma had a pretty good, first half some years ago. We won't mention the former coach. I don't want to get Oklahoma fans mad at us.
Any other overarching thoughts on, Notre Dame quitting or anything else for the playoff field that kind of stood out to you?
Mike, if I could, do you mind if I have some direct thoughts about the playoff committee here?
Is Steven about to get on his soapbox here?
First of all, I will continue to champion the quarterfinals should be on campus sites. We've got to get these games at home. To let Georgia have a home game. I think about like the awesome atmosphere that we're going to see at Texas A&M in just a few days. Ole Miss as well. Like, it's great. Oklahoma too, but we got to get them on the quarters. The next thing, Mike, and I know Notre Dame's not going to get much sympathy from anybody that listens to the show, but I would just say the idea that a team can jump another team when they didn't play is completely asinine in this scenario. There was nothing about those two teams that changed. And it brings me to this next point. The committee there needs to be a confidence factor when they make these decisions. Their explanations each week do not make any sense. It does not give me any confidence as a college football fan. They know what the heck they're talking about. And, to hear yesterday, I've tasked the committee to go back and watch Miami Notre Dame. Did you not watch that game in week 1? Were you not watching that game in week 12, 13? And to say that we can't evaluate teams until they're back to back. Mike, I don't care if it's Notre Dame, Miami, if it's Alabama, Oklahoma, whoever it is. If you can't evaluate two teams that are 10 and 12 or 11 and 14, I don't know what you're doing on the committee. Just don't take that job. I don't understand anything about the process. Reasonable people can disagree about whether that head-to-head should hold everything or Notre Dame is playing better at this point in the season. I agree with both those. But the process of this is completely screwed up. And the reason why I bring that up is because it's Notre Dame this week. It might be Georgia next year. It could be Oklahoma next year. It could be one of these SEC teams. We've got to find a way to restore confidence in the committee, and it starts with more transparency. It starts by putting the metrics out so we as fans can look at them, talk about them, and if you can't explain your rankings on Tuesday night, get somebody in there who can, because otherwise you're just going to end up with this screwed up process every year. And that's my biggest concern going forward, is that the process has to change. So I'm sorry for getting on my soapbox. Like I said, it's Notre Dame this year. It could be an SEC team next year. I just want to go ahead and let's get the process started and fixing this thing.
Is there any reason we don't go back to like a BCS? Is it because we all got so mad at the BCS?
I would love a BCS style formula. I'm glad you asked me that, because I really think one of the reasons that people hated the BCS wasn't necessarily the computers, was the fact that we only had 2 teams in there. And so it feels like in a wider, like if we go to, which I think we will, this will cause people to go to 16 and maybe the urgency shows up for next season. The BCS, the formula, with using all these computer rankings, then you have a committee who can sort of parse through some of these things. And the point of the committee is to talk through some of these things. And the fact they can't even compute the idea that Miami and Notre Dame are just a few spots apart one week, and now they're back to back. Now we can make the change. I have never been so furious in my life. I wanted to throw my remote at the TV while watching this yesterday, because I was just so frustrated as a college football fan that this is the setup and this is the explanations that we get. We deserve better as college football fans, and there's no reason that the committee should continue to just slapdash and give us half answers throughout the season.
Caboose said, have Shane and Marler pick the team.
I'm available, but yeah, I'm good with Shane and Marler.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
I apologize to everyone for getting on my soapbox. I just feel very passionate. We need to fix this.
We do. And one thing that maybe they don't need to fix because they got it going pretty good, Stephen, is Ole Miss and the ride they're on. So shout out Token gave us $5. Ohio State and Georgia. What? He might have left, but Ole Miss is going all the way. Say it. Say it. So shout out Token. Hey, I'm rooting for you, buddy. That's my team. Now that they won't let Vanderbilt in the field, I think because they were terrified that Vanderbilt would do some damage here. Now my team in the playoff right now is Ole Miss. That's who I'm rooting for to win it.
Mike, can you imagine Diego Pavia in the playoff? Can you imagine what an awesome sight that would be? I mean, I am very apprehensive about expansion to begin with. I think there's protecting the regular season is really important, but there's years like this, and that's the challenge, is that every year is going to be different. But I would love to see Vanderbilt in there. I would love to see Texas, to see these two teams. Then Texas getting a little bit hot at the end of the year, Vanderbilt and Pavia showing up. Man, what a sight that would be. But Mike, on Ole Miss, I think the best thing that you can look at the path for Ole Miss. Number one, they beat Tulane already convincingly, 45-10. John Sumrall's got like a foot out the door to Florida. It's a great setup if you're Pete Golding for your first game at Ole Miss. I think the second game, if you're playing Georgia, if you're Ole Miss and you beat Tulane, you get Georgia. You've already played them one time. You know what to expect. So I think I would feel better. And I know this will probably make some Ole Miss fans mad. I know what to expect out of a Lane Kiffin team. I don't know what to expect yet at a Pete Golding team. I think they're going to be good in round one. And I think with the talent, they're going to be just fine to give Georgia a game in round two if they end up there. But I think if Kiffin was on the sidelines, I think you'd probably see a few more people thinking this team could make a run. There's probably some doubt there because of the coaching change.
Yeah. And then you mentioned Diego right before we went live. It's official, Stephen. The Heisman has announced the 4 finalists. Diego made it. Fernando Mendoza, the Indiana quarterback. Julian Sayin, how do you spell that, Kayla DeBoer? The Ohio State quarterback. And then Jeremiah Love, the Notre Dame running back. He is not, to my knowledge, opted out of the Heisman ceremony just yet, but he probably will if he finds out he's not going to win it. Of those 4, Stephen, who do you think wins the award here? When do they announce that? This week or next?
Yeah, Saturday night.
Okay.
Actually, we got a bowl game on Saturday night. We got Army Navy. So it's not, the calendar is not completely devoid of games if you're a college football fan. Mike, I thought Diego Pavia was going to win the Heisman Trophy on Saturday before Fernando Mendoza led Indiana to that win. He had a couple clutch throws. There was like one big throw in the second half, and then there was a late third down conversion. And I was watching the odds, and they kind of flipped. They were Pavia favored, and then Mendoza went to the favorite. So I think Pavia held a lead before the games last week. Mendoza probably passed him after the game against Ohio State. Personally, I do like Diego Pavia. I think he'd be a strong number one if I had a Heisman ballot, but I don't. So if I did, I probably would vote Pavia, then Mendoza, but I think Mendoza's probably going to win it.
Just another reason they should have let Pavia play on Saturday. Pad them stats against a quality opponent like Miami or Notre Dame. Yeah, I shouldn't have said Notre Dame's a quality opponent, but Miami probably is. Hey, shout out Shin, 20 more bucks. He agrees with you, Stephen. Thank you. They should have had Miami ahead of Notre Dame the whole season if head-to-head was the factor. I say finish top 15. If you're a conference champion, you get a first-round bye, then filter the rest according to the rankings and screw the G5.
I worry if – I know this is like deep in the weeds here. I do worry a little bit if they try to block out the G5, if other powers might get involved, if you know what I mean. Antitrust things, and also, those hardworking people up in government might get involved. So I think they probably have to keep the G5 thing in there, Mike. But his point about it is kind of exactly what I think a lot of people have to be frustrated about, is if Miami was ahead of Notre Dame after the Pittsburgh game after Thanksgiving, I don't think we're having this kind of crazy outrage. And like I said, if you don't like Notre Dame and you're fine to screw them out of the playoff, like, that's fine. What I worry about is like I said, it's Notre Dame's day. It could be Alabama next year. And this asinine theory that they have to wait till they saw these two teams. They have all the metrics. They don't have to wait to the end of the season. Like, it was almost like to create unnecessary drama on Selection Sunday. If you thought Miami was better, rank them ahead of them. Don't wait to the last Sunday. There was nothing that changed on the final weekend. Boise State winning actually helped Notre Dame. They played in the regular season, and Boise State won the Mountain West. So none of this makes any sense to me. There's no game. Neither team played. Nothing should have changed it. If you thought Miami was better, make the change last week. Don't make it on the finals Sunday. I'm just completely confused by the entire process.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you this, because this is an interesting question I asked Marler earlier. I'm just kind of curious to hear your thoughts, Stephen. Of all the teams playing in the first round, which one do you have the most confidence to win the national championship?
That's a good question. I would probably go Oregon. But since I know we got a lot of SEC fans listening, right?
Yeah, that was a terrible answer.
Yeah.
You got another one?
Yeah, see, I've defended Notre Dame. And now you're telling me now you're saying Oregon. So yeah, not a good night, Stephen. Mike, I still think Texas A&M is underseeded. I think that was the other thing that stood out to me. It's not a knock on Ole Miss. I just think they dropped Texas A&M too far a couple weeks ago. I think they should actually be the 6th seed, and Ole Miss should be the 7. So I actually think A&M's a little bit underseeded here. And if they win that game, they'll get a shot against Ohio State, and that game would be in Texas at the Cotton Bowl. So a little bit of home field advantage potentially there. And of course, if you beat Ohio State, maybe you get a shot at Georgia. The bracket is tougher, I think, on the bottom to go for a run. But I still think Texas A&M being underseeded, some of the things they bring to the table with the play in the trenches, Marcel Reed getting back on track, I think they have a chance to make a run. Just the bracket does them no favors.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it, Stephen? I mean, we were told there was going to be schedule taken into account.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm completely ignorant. I'll admit it. I never try to tell anything but the way it is, at least for me. I'm completely ignorant of Indiana. I've not watched them one time. But I'm just kind of curious. I don't know if they had to go to Notre Dame, Auburn, Florida, which beat Texas, at LSU, at Missouri. If they had a 31-0 comeback against, if they were down 30-3 to South Carolina, if they had to go to Texas, I mean, are they 11-1? I mean, I don't know, but I find that hard to believe. I find it hard to believe Ohio State be 11-1 if they had to go through all that. I'd find it hard to believe that either one of those teams would be 10-2 if they had to play. Trying to pull up Oklahoma schedule. If they had to play Michigan, Auburn, Texas on a neutral field, at Carolina, Ole Miss, at Tennessee, at Alabama, Missouri, LSU. I mean, I don't know. But again, these teams made it. But the fact that we kind of didn't value the strength of schedule for the rankings, that seems to be a bit off to me.
I don't see where the committee actually took that into account. Maybe the field was just cut and dry this year. I think you could have made a case for Georgia at 2 over Ohio State. I understand the argument that, hey, Indiana, Ohio State was a close game. You don't want to penalize Ohio State too much, so you only move them down to 2. That's fair. I do think Georgia could be the 2 seed here. You asked about strength of schedule, Mike, and every strength of schedule metric can differ from website to website. Indiana is 29 on ESPN, and by comparison, Oklahoma is 12, Vanderbilt 25, Texas 7, Alabama 6. One way to think about this too, and TV ratings, I think, aren't necessarily like indicative of anything other than a bunch of people watching. But think about the big time matchups that some of these teams have had, like Alabama, the back-to-back-to-back stretch. Indiana had Oregon, and of course they had Ohio State on Saturday. But there was a lot, and this is true with Ohio State. We saw this year. After playing Texas, they were kind of off the national radar because of how weak their schedule was, until they played Michigan. Like, they had no big time matchups. And so Indiana went on the road and beat Iowa. They beat Oregon. They had the close call against Penn State, but UCLA, Wisconsin, Maryland, those were all pretty bad teams this year. So I would say there's also a difference in environments that I think is underrated in strength of schedule, like going to, play in front of 80, 90,000 fans in the SEC as opposed to some of these other environments. So strength of schedule did not show up for me, at least for me, in these discussions by the committee. Perhaps they just there wasn't enough there to maybe necessitate a little bit deeper dive on the strength schedule.
Well, I'm glad you got the guts to say it, Stephen, because I don't think Hunter Yurachek did.
He was too busy making 6-7 jokes this time. I would dare to say this might be the worst committee that we've had. And it's not just Notre Dame. It's the weekly explanations. It's like, we joke about, it's like, well, Texas A&M's defense is an issue and Alabama's rushing attack. I appreciate their willingness to do a deep dive on these things, but they're missing the mark. And so, when we talk about strength of schedule, it does matter, and trying to parse through some of these teams and rankings. It just doesn't feel like what they were directed to do is what mattered. Now, perhaps Texas should have just been a spot or two higher. The loss to Florida weighed them down. The committee, I lost a ton of confidence in the committee, and I already had very low confidence to begin with this year.
Mm-hmm. And then any of the non-playoff games, but the bowls that, is there one or two or more that you're particularly fired up to see that involve an SEC team?
Mike, how about the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl with Michigan and Texas? Man, talk about two big-time brands getting together. Love the Bryce Underwood, Arch Manning quarterback matchup. I think that's going to be one of the better bowl games outside of the playoff. Also, love the Tennessee-Illinois game. Just kind of a fun. I think it's got the highest over-under of a bowl game so far this offseason. So I think a lot of these SEC bowl games, Mike, are going to be fun. You got that one in the Music City. You got the Citrus Bowl, Iowa Vanderbilt. Iowa's great defense going up against Diego Pavia. There's a lot of fun matchups here in the SEC.
Is India? I've not watched Iowa. Are they capable of scoring more than 10 points a game?
Better this year. Yes, they have a functional offense this year. It is very run first, but it is functional. They average about 29 points a game this year, Mike. His scoring outburst there.
I'm just glad they're not playing Kentucky. I know Kentucky didn't make it, but it seems like we get Kentucky, Iowa. We get that about every other year.
Was that one Iowa-Kentucky Music City Bowl a few years ago? Was that the one where
I think they kicked Benny Snell out?
Was that the game? I forget. It felt like that game had a very low over-under just because of how pathetic some of the offenses were projected to be by Vegas. So
yeah, it was bad. I'm
hopefully 21-0 in 2022 was that game.
Yeah. Ugh. That was a tough one to watch. But Stephen, whether it's playoff games, whether it's bowl game, wherever your team is, even if they're at home, maybe you want to buy tickets for somebody this holiday season, Stephen. Go check them out. SeatGeek. Come on. With promo code SEC10, you can do this on your phone. It's very convenient, or just go to SeatGeek.com. Either way, same promo code SEC10. Get 10% off your tickets today as we get into playoff mode, bowl mode, or maybe you go to an NFL game or an NBA game, or it doesn't even have to be a game. Could be like a band concert, a theater performance. They got it all covered over at SeatGeek. So go check them out, and don't forget that promo code SEC10. You want to watch Iowa scores 6 points as Vanderbilt scores 50. Go get you some tickets over at SeatGeek. Save 10% with that promo code SEC10. You know what, Stephen?
Absolutely, Mike. It's like the perfect promo code with bowl season, NFL playoffs coming up. Like you said, makes maybe great like stocking stuffers. Like if you want to buy your significant other some concert tickets. Is there a bowl game that SEC Mike would put that SeatGeek SEC10 promo code in to go see this bowl season?
I really want to see Mississippi State.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just the fact that we might have Jeff Lebby covered in mayo. I don't even know who they're playing. I think Wake Forest, maybe.
Wake Forest,
but,
yeah.
Yeah. So, but Kamario Taylor, he kind of won me over in that Egg Bowl. And again, we could sit here and make jokes about these games, but the fact that promising freshman gets 15 more practices, that could be instrumental for Mississippi State next season. And not just the quarterback, obviously, but a lot of players on that team. And Zach Arnett, now they got him. We'll get into that, I'm sure. But he's already on staff. I don't think he's going to be coaching in the game, but he could be evaluating practices. Buddy, that could be incredibly valuable for State next year.
Right. Mike, I think bowl games can be devalued a bit in this 12-team era. But at the same time, for Mississippi State to go to a bowl game, be able to use those practices, like you said, with Kamario Taylor, maybe using Zach Arnett to evaluate the defensive personnel, it's a huge opportunity here. I mean, winning the Duke's Mayo Bowl, it's a trophy. Jeff Levy getting dunked in mayonnaise would be kind of funny. It's like, for Jeff Levy, you're going to a bowl game, but you may get dunked in mayonnaise. It's probably some good and some bad there for him. But these are kind of, I always think about them as they're exhibitions. There are opportunities for, they're almost like preseason games. Like we get to see Kamario Taylor one more time, see how far he's come since the end of the regular season. Maybe there's some other guys who didn't play, maybe on the younger side, who develop in bowl season and get a chance to play. So I think it's always, I love the bowl season because we get to see these teams one more time. And it's kind of nice. Like we didn't expect to see Mississippi State and being able to get to see Kamario Taylor. I think that's a heck of a nice little accomplishment for Mississippi State.
Yeah, sorry I'm laughing, Stephen, but Brodo says Levy takes mayo bass on the regular, and Cherokee Cooch says, well, that's a lot of mayo. Oh, man, to get your mind off the mayo, though, where you could really help out yourself, help out a family member, or someone you want to get a gift for this holiday season, Stephen. PonchoOutdoors.com/SEC. Get 10% off, Stephen. You can't beat it. Come on. This is a Austin-based business, so we love partnering with people out of the SEC like Poncho. Go check them out. Again, that's PonchoOutdoors.com/SEC to get $10 off. Free shipping. Come on. You can't beat that, Stephen. And everything at Poncho. They have the Poncho Promise, free shipping, free returns, free exchanges. Poncho stands by every shirt this holiday season. So maybe you're the coach of Mississippi State and you get just completely douched with mayo. Man, you're going to need you a new shirt. Go over to ponchooutdoors.com/SEC. They even got some SEC themed shirts over there. Got to go check them out. ponchooutdoors.com/SEC. Get $10 off.
Mike also got some long sleeve shirts, which you might need if you're going to that playoff game in Norman. Looks like it might be a little chilly around the country for those first playoff games. So always good to get that, and always good if you're a coach. And like you said, if you're going to get mayo bath, you better pregame and go to Poncho Outdoors and get you some apparel because you're probably going to need it.
Oh, I forgot you're a long sleeve man. So
that's right.
No wonder. I know what I'm getting, Steven. I'm getting him a long sleeve from Poncho Outdoors this Christmas season. You know what?
It's got to hide those Arch Manning tattoos, Mike. I can't be embarrassed watching.
All right. Hey, let's get into a lot of coaching news, Stephen. We've been getting, and shout out, we even got some donations. So let's start with trying to find which one. Yeah, shout out Vols GBO, Mike and Stephen. Can we talk about Tim Banks? Any inside info on the search for the defensive coordinator on old Rocky Top? What'd you think of that, Stephen? Tennessee dismisses defensive coordinator Tim Banks a year after he was I believe a finalist, either a finalist or a semifinalist for the Briles Award given to the nation's top assistant coach. Now he's out. I believe, Stephen, this could be wrong, but I just can't think of another one. This could be the first time Heupel's fired an assistant as he's Tennessee's coach. I can't think of another he's done that to. What's your thoughts on Tim Banks going and candidates possibly for Tennessee?
Mike, is it fair to say two things can be true, that some things happened outside of Tim Banks's control, like the injuries, but that also somebody had to be like the fall guy for what was a pretty bad defensive performance, even with those injuries?
I think so. But so this is also something I said to Marler, where I feel like Tennessee's in this weird, they're in a difficult spot because they're a very good program. Heck, they just made the playoff. But I don't think, if you're being honest with yourself, you watch that team, you're like, oh yeah, this is they're a play away here or anything like that from winning the national championship or even an SEC championship. Yet that's where they want to be, right? So to go from good to elite, that's probably the hardest step of all. And I think Josh Heupel, as good as an offensive mind as he is, he really needs an elite defensive mind to get Tennessee to that spot. Is that fair?
That's 100% fair. I think that's my question with Tennessee this offseason, and why I think it's probably the right move to move on from Tim Banks is because if you're Tennessee, like 8-4 is good, but it's not good enough. Like, how do you go from that tier to being a 10-win team that can make the playoff next year, but not only next year, start stringing together like multiple double-digit win seasons back to back to back? And so the way to do that is, and I think they're not stuck, but it feels like one of those off seasons where they're standing in the middle of the off season and saying they could go here or here. And if you make the right moves next year, they're back in the playoff. If they don't, and maybe you just bring Tim Banks back and just try to run that back, you're stuck maybe in 8-4 again. So it feels like a really important offseason. Not that Heupel's on the hot seat or anything like that. It just feels like they've got to figure out, they're right here in the middle, how do you get to that next level? And one of the ways is to make this change to defensive coordinators. So I do think Banks had a lot of things that went out of his control. The injuries were awful. You take away 2 corners that were going to be, high picks or all SEC picks. But you can't have the defensive disaster, and especially how the season ended with losing to Vanderbilt. I think that performance probably weighed prominently in the evaluation for Tim Banks. Mike, I do think, just to throw this out there, I think Tennessee can get a really, really good defensive coordinator. They've got the resources. I think with an offensive coach like Heupel, you can have some autonomy on that side of the ball. They should be able to get somebody really good here.
Yeah, my only concern, Stephen, is sometimes, obviously, Tennessee runs that tempo. You kind of, I don't want to say leave the defense out to dry, because last year when they made the playoff, I thought they did a really good job of adjusting the tempo, playing to the strengths, running the football, playing good elite defense at times. That's how they got to the playoff. So Heupel has shown a willingness to adapt if need be. A lot of coaches won't do that. But I think if Heupel has his way, I think he really likes this offense he had this year, as he should. Explosive, pushing the ball down the field. But the tempo, your defense is going to see a lot of snaps if things are going right on Rocky Top. So it makes it a challenging spot, which may make it a little bit more difficult to attract a defensive coordinator. Would you buy that?
I would buy that. To your point on Tennessee's plays, they were on the field the most plays of any defense in the SEC this season, 856. Now, last season they were closer to the top of the SEC. I think they were 6th in the conference. So, there is a fine line between playing your offensive style and also play into a style that's conducive to building a team. And, just thinking about maybe some candidates, I think about like Jim Knowles at Penn State. He won a national championship at Ohio State before he was at Oklahoma State, when they played a lot of like up-tempo type stuff. So I think his veteran experience could come in on day one and probably make this group better. I think I've seen Ryan Walters' name thrown around. He was the former Purdue coach. He's been at Illinois, and he was also at Washington this year as defensive coordinator. I really like his defenses. I think he'd be a heck of a pickup if Tennessee could get him. Those would probably be like my top 2 names. I know Tony White from Florida State's been thrown out too. I think he'd be pretty solid, but I probably would have him like 3rd on my wish list if I was Tennessee.
Mm-hmm. All right. Hey, how about we had another donation? I think it was Michael Dunlap. I can't find it though. But we do appreciate it, Michael Dunlap, where he wanted your thoughts. Oh, yeah, here we go. Would Kendal Briles be a good hire for Shane Beamer at South Carolina as the next offensive coordinator? What's your thoughts on that potential move?
Don't you think it feels a lot like Briles at Arkansas with KJ Jefferson trying to run that back with Lenora Sellers?
Yeah, and I think that would be a good fit for Sellers.
I do too. I think that was my first thought was if Beamer, you never want to make a hire for like 1 year, one player. But I think in terms of having that SEC experience and seeing what he could do with Sellers, I think they could turn around this offense in a hurry. So I like that potential fit for South Carolina. Now they got to get the offensive line fixed. They got to fix some other things, run game, receivers. But I think given his track record of working with like KJ Jefferson and kind of that style quarterback, I think he and Sellers could really cook up some good things next year if that's the way it works out.
Yeah, and hey, shout out our friends over at Power Mizzou, Stephen. They reported something a little while ago, and I just saw right here, cousin Jason reference it. So apparently, in Eli Drinkowitz's new contract, he had a $12 million a salary pool. Now he gets $16 million. Again, I saw that reported by Power Mizzou, so we can trust them. They're the best in the market, I think, when it comes to covering just Missouri. But if that's, I don't know how much that is allocated to, I really don't know. But assuming $4+ million, that kind of leads me to believe, Stephen, you tell me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just making an assumption here. But that's telling me that he may be going after some elite coordinator, hopefully offensive coordinator. And I like Kirby Moore, but I don't know. I don't know that that's been working that well.
Could it also be for maybe an extension for Corey Batoon?
Yeah, that's fair too. Because I've seen him on some lists too.
I think, maybe both things are true. Washington State just lost their head coach on Friday to Iowa State. I think Kirby Moore's name was connected with Washington State. Not sure if that's going to work out, but it does feel like this offense, I don't want to say something's missing, but they have been a little bit inconsistent. Maybe that's putting it mildly. I could totally see that. Maybe you extend Batoon to make sure he doesn't go somewhere else, and then you get a chance, you upgrade at offensive coordinator if you have a chance there.
Yeah, and I mean, they're in a... Again, I've liked a lot of what Kirby Moore's done, but quarterback, now there's been injuries. There's been injuries everywhere, but offensive line, I think there were some misevaluations, and quarterbacks have been banged up. I don't know. I think Missouri is one of the more interesting teams in the conference this year. What they do at quarterback, what they do at offensive coordinator, and maybe they stand pat. And I don't think the fans will like that. But there's often times where we demand change, Ohio State and their coach, and it doesn't happen. And staying pat can work too. I don't know. What do you think Missouri does this year?
Aren't they kind of like Tennessee almost, to where they've had a really good run, but it's always easier. And I think you said this with Heupel. Right. It's always easy to come in, make some changes, and the program gets better. It's always harder to maintain that and go to the next level. And so I wonder if that's the debate at Missouri is like they've won 29 games over the last 3 years, and they had an opportunity, maybe a little bit of a missed opportunity at times given the schedule to get to the playoffs. So I was actually just checking this out, Mike. They play Georgia, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and Ole Miss next year. Like that's most of the playoff teams from the SEC, right? So their schedule is going to be significantly more difficult. So I think that is kind of the question: is how do you go from being 8-4, 10-2 outside the playoff to being a program that can make that jump next season and even beyond that, like consistently? Because I think Drinkwitz has done a good job of identifying talent from the portal, bringing it in, developing it, but on the margins, things are going pretty good, but you also don't want to get kind of stale, if that's a fair term.
No, I think that's completely fair. I think that is very, very fair. What other coaching moves in the SEC? It's been a while since we've last talked, and a lot's happened. How about Blake Baker staying at LSU? How big is that for Coach Kiffin and the Tigers?
Mike, I think it's huge. For all of LSU's problems this year, defense was at the, kind of at the bottom of that list. Baker's done a great job there. Of course, he's one of the highest paid coordinators, if not the highest paid coordinator in college football. But it's big because we know that Kiffin is going to score points. We know they're going to figure this out offensively. But the kind of the piece at Ole Miss, I thought once they hired Pete Golding, that kind of helped that program take that next step. We talk about trying to find the right coordinators and get into the next kind of tier of college football. Hiring Golding helped turn the defense around. But now you've got one of the best in Blake Baker. So they've got the offense. I think they got the defense. I think Kiffin's off to a pretty good start on his staff there.
Who would it mean more, do you think, Steven? Because I think there's some jockeying going on behind the scenes between LSU and Ole Miss for Mr. Charlie Weis Jr. Who would it be bigger for to land Charlie Weis for 2026?
I think probably Ole Miss. Because I think that's the question. And I think this is an issue with defensive coordinators when they become a head coach, is because they often hire somebody as the offensive coordinator who's a little bit cautious because they want to play to their defense and they just miss. I think you and I talked about the Muschamp example. Like, he just cycled through coordinators almost every year. Well, I think you have to find somebody, if you're a defensive coordinator, to trust, and also you have a good familiarity with. And so I think if you could do that, you're already starting out with, like, the blueprint is there the last couple of years. It's working. So don't change from it. If you have to bring somebody new in, you make changes, and maybe you don't find the right guy, that would be big for Ole Miss, don't you think?
I think so. And you got to believe that. Well, yeah. I mean, for LSU, I think it could be pretty big too, Steven. I mean, they credit Charlie Weis for a lot of the success they've had. Now everybody's going to give it to Kiffin, so you would just assume that, he's probably got a good eye for a good assistant to elevate to be the next LSU or the first LSU coordinator under him. But yeah, I don't know. I wonder how much Kiffin credits Ole Miss success to Charlie Weis.
I think if I was LSU and I was in the position of, you solidified Blake Baker, I think you would just trust Lane Kiffin to call plays if you had to. Whereas, I almost think about like a rating system. If Kiffin is the play caller or Weis, like, there's no drop off. Like, if you're Ole Miss, there's an unknown there to whoever you hire versus what you have in Weis. Like, not trying to minimize his impact. I just think if I'm LSU and I'm sitting here saying, if Weis leaves, we still feel pretty good because Kiffin can just call plays. Whereas Ole Miss, maybe you have to start a search and maybe you miss on the guy, and that could be a little bit trickier. It feels like he would mean more to Pete Golding right now at Ole Miss trying to keep this together.
Yeah. Hey, I believe last time we spoke, Steven, I think the Brad White to Florida news was announced and we discussed it. But I don't believe that we've talked about Buster Faulkner to Florida as the offensive coordinator to go work with the only coach, Steven, to lead a Louisiana program to the playoff this year. Well, and actually coach the team. John Sumrall there at Florida. So what's your thoughts on, now that we have the complete coordinator duo in Gainesville, what's your thoughts on those hires?
Mike, this is a really strong start for John Sumrall. It feels like they already have one of the better coordinator combinations in the SEC. Brad White, I think, did a solid job at Kentucky, all things considered. I think Buster Faulkner is one of the most creative play callers in college football. Did a great job at Georgia Tech with the run game, the creativity, turned Haynes King into one of the top quarterbacks in the ACC. I also think that he did a good job of just maximizing the talent on the roster, different ways to use all the weapons that they have. So it feels like somebody with that kind of track record who's got experience in the SEC, I think he can help develop DJ Lagway, or if it's another quarterback there, I think Summerall's off to a strong start, and I love the hire of Buster Faulkner. It's one of my favorite coordinator hires so far this offseason.
Mm-hmm. Better than Zach Arnett, Steven. Back to Mississippi State. What in the world is happening? Former head coach, former defensive coordinator. Now he's back.
This news came also a couple hours after it was, I think, broke that Brent Pry is coming back to Virginia Tech. to be James Franklin's defensive coordinator. He was just fired as Virginia Tech's coach months ago. It's bizarre. Mike, I think we've talked about our guy, Coleman Hutzler. He let us down this year. He gave him a lot of grief last year, kind of turned things around at the start of this year. Things trended in a bad direction at the end of the year. I think this is the right hire for Jeff Lebby, though, because you need somebody with a lot of veteran leadership who's been way more experienced on that side of the ball. I think Hutzler was kind of a gamble that maybe he was a little bit of an up-and-comer. Arnett, you know what you're walking into. Of course, he's coached there before. I think he's coached, obviously, with Mike Leach, and he knows kind of working for an offensive-minded coach. You need somebody, and this is the same thing with Tennessee and Missouri. Like, Mississippi State took a big step forward. So now how do you go from 5 wins to 8 wins? And one of the ways is getting better on defense. And I think hiring somebody of Arnett's track record is the right call here.
What's your thoughts on A&M losing Collin Klein to be the head coach at Kansas State? How big of a departure could that be? And again, this is no slight to him because, heck, he just got a head coaching job. So and clearly he did a tremendous job at A&M this year. But here, to me, this is another classic example, Stephen, of the players matter more than the coaches, because this time last year, there was a lot of people, even A&M fans, said, I don't know about this guy. Now, you go out and get some elite receivers, you get better quarterback play. Of course, that's a credit to Coach Klein for coaching up Marcel Reed. You got the offensive line going from, average to arguably elite. And then all of a sudden, the guy looks like $1 million. So again, players matter more than plays. But what's your thoughts on this?
I think 2 things can be true there, Mike. I think one, they're going to miss Collin Klein because he did a good job with this offense, and the offense took a bit, like you said, a big step forward from last year. And some of that was going out and getting playmakers at receiver. Mario Craver and Concepcion make a big difference in the passing game when you have guys who can make plays. So I think what Elko did in the portal really made Collin Klein's job easier to make the offense go this season. So I think they're going to miss him, especially if just thinking about, like, every program's going to have turnover, but you don't want to lose a rising star like Collin Klein. It's his alma mater. So I think had this been another job, I think he probably is back for next season. I know he was involved in the Oklahoma State search as well. I think you have to kind of trust Elko to find the right guy, because he's already done it once with Collin Klein. He got more involved with the defense this year. Kind of feels like he's pushing all the right buttons and certainly getting to the playoff. Also, A&M is not going to be short on resources to go out and get anybody to be the offensive coordinator. Like I said, I always worry about defensive coordinators being a little bit too cautious about their hires and hiring somebody who's going to play like caveman, like ball running at the line of scrimmage 50 times. I think Elko is going to do okay here, though. But the unknown definitely gives me a little bit of anxiety if I was an A&M fan.
Any thoughts on Joe Sloan being the next Kentucky offensive coordinator? Seems a little questionable to me. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, a little questionable in that one. I think because I don't think Will Stein said he said he was not going to call plays. Is that right?
Will Stein?
Yeah, I think he said that Sloan was going to be the play caller.
I like it even less now, Steve.
Right? Yeah. I like, my first thought when I saw that was, he did say, I think at his opening press conference, that he was not going to call plays. So
he may have to backtrack on that one.
I guess that is the good thing, right? You have an offensive-minded head coach who at any point could just go over and take away the play sheet and start calling plays. Before this LSU thing, and Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think there was a kind of a thought that Sloan was kind of one of the rising star coordinators and maybe assistant coaches. Some of it, obviously, the offensive line was so bad this year, it may have been hard for anybody to make anything out. Admittedly, this is not one of my favorite coordinator hires so far, just based upon what we saw at LSU. I think that's fair, right?
Yeah, and to your point, he had a good reputation. Excellent recruiter. So maybe some of that goes into it. He was the one that identified and got Bryce Underwood. Of course, they lost him, but I don't think that had anything to do with him. I think we all know what that had to do with. But Michigan had to get him, and they swept him away. So, we'll see. But it's almost like you got to trust Will Stein to know what he's doing here. You know what?
Yeah, I think you give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt on his offensive hires because, like I said, he is kind of the backstop. If it doesn't work out, he can always call plays. I also thought they were reportedly going to hire Justin Burke, who was at UTSA, and he was UTSA's play caller this year. So if that works out, you do have two guys with play calling experience plus Stein. You got three pretty smart offensive coaches in the room. They can figure it out. So in some ways, the backstop of having the head coach with offensive experience probably mitigates some of my concern about Joe Sloan being the potential play caller here.
Are there any other coaching moves that I may have missed that in the Southeastern Conference that kind of piqued your interest?
How about the start that Ryan Silverfield's had at Arkansas? I know the Ron Roberts move isn't necessarily like official yet, but I do like if that's where they end up at DC. Also, Tim Cramsey, their offensive coordinator at Memphis, put together some really nice offenses, and even before then. So I think he's off to a good start as far as his staffing goes. He's obviously made an impression in recruiting, getting donations in. So I know there's a lot of apprehension about Ryan Silverfield and his start. I think he's won the offseason so far at Arkansas. We'll be curious to see how the official staff comes into place, but I like what I'm hearing so far.
Well, we almost had Ron Roberts at Arkansas once before, Stephen, and then at the 11th hour switched, went to, I believe, Auburn, went to go work with Old Freeze. That didn't end up so well. And then he pivoted, of course, to Florida, where he's done a good job down there at Florida, and it certainly wasn't the defense's fault that they were so awful this year.
Yeah, I think having somebody with SEC experience and being a veteran coordinator is probably a good thing for Silverfield because I think, first of all, he's an offensive coach, and also Tim Cramsey, I think, can do a good enough job offensively to where just seeing what happened with this team this year, scoring points wasn't a problem, but they got to put the complete team together. And I think having somebody with a little bit of veteran pool in the SEC like Roberts is a good thing.
And just so you can keep up, Stephen, cousin Shane has nicknamed Ryan Silverfield old Long John Silver. So
okay.
That's what we're going with. That's what we're calling him on this program until he still hasn't won us over quite yet.
I thought his enthusiasm at the basketball game, like firing up the fans, like, I'm all in on like, I mean, maybe just because I'm looking for like starving for college football content. I love like seeing the coaches get engaged with the fan bases for the first time. It feels like maybe, he's kind of won some people over. The real proof will be the wins and losses, right? But he's had a good start.
Oh yeah, no, he's off to a good start, but he's still Long John Silver till further notice.
Is cousin Shane going to Long John Silver's every day, or is that
not every day, but
okay.
At least once a week? I think he's hitting it up.
I haven't been to a Long John Silver's in forever. Have you?
I think there's only about 3 of them left, but there's one in his town. I'm well aware of that.
So he's keeping that third location open, right?
It's a short drive from his house, trust me. But what also Shane is keeping in business, shout out, Hollow Socks, Stephen, go check them out. They're back for another week on the show. These are some outstanding compression socks, and now that it's getting cool out there, Stephen, you got to keep your feet, your toes warm. It's a killer. It'll get you if you don't have your socks on. So go check them out, hollowsocks.com. Buy 2, get 2 free. Stephen, right now at hollowsocks.com. Go check them out. Up to 50% off your order. They got all kinds of deals going this holiday season. They got the hunt socks. They got the trade socks. Like I said, the compression socks or just everyday socks. They got so many socks, it'll blow your socks off. Go check them out, hollowsocks.com. No promo code on this one. Don't even need it, Stephen, to get you buy 2, get 2 free. You know what?
What about if you're a coach who maybe does some yoga in the mornings? Do you think they would like the compression socks would help with like the muscle soreness the next day?
I think it would help that guy in a lot of ways. Trust me. So, I maybe we'll send some down to old Baton Rouge to help him out.
Mike, as somebody who works out a lot, the muscle soreness is a real, pain. So, yeah, I think maybe after doing some yoga, you put on your hollow socks and those muscles feel better. You can hit that recruiting trail, no problem.
All right, Stephen, let's hit the award market right here because we've got some SEC awards to hand out now that the regular season is behind us, and we want to honor some of the best individuals, coachings, and things of that nature in the SEC this season. We got a lot of awards here, and a lot of them are a little bit off the wall, but we're a little bit different here, Steven, so we're not going to just do the standard stuff. But let's knock off a couple of the standard ones. MVP, most valuable player in the Southeastern Conference in 2025. Who is your MVP of the SEC?
Mike, this one was easy for me. I agonized over pretty much all of these, but this one is potentially the guy that should win the Heisman Trophy. Give me Diego Pavia, second nationally in total offense, over 400 yards of total offense in those last 4 games. The value, the production, the leadership, what he meant to Vanderbilt, he's an easy MVP pick for me.
Right. When you write that out, most valuable player, I don't rightfully think, now maybe you almost put Arch, but I don't think you could put anyone other than Mr. Diego Pavia for his value, for his team. Should have been in the playoff. We know now he's a Heisman finalist, so shout out Diego. He's both of our MVPs for the 2025 SEC season. All right, Steven, so how about offensive player of the year in the SEC? Now, this is probably a little bit trickier here. Who's your offensive player of the year?
This is one that I wrestled with a ton. So I could have gone with Pavia just because he's MVP, but I wanted to try and spread the wealth. So I went with Gunnar Stockton, Mike. Maybe a little bit of a surprise. I considered Trinidad Chambliss. I had Ty Simpson in here, Marcel Reed. I pretty much considered the quarterbacks. But one thing I liked about Gunnar Stockton is love the efficiency, the timely plays to the ground, to the air. I know his yards per attempt is a little bit on the lower side compared to some of the other ones. But I went back and I was studying all the quarterback stats. And then I looked at his numbers when they played Tennessee. You think about that completion late in the game that was clutch. Texas, he came up big in the SEC championship game. Ole Miss, in Georgia's biggest moments, Stockton came through. So that was kind of the card that I went with. But if you want to go with Chambliss or Ty Simpson or someone else, I really won't disagree with you. This was really tough.
Ooh, yeah. I think the guy that I went with, Steven, you didn't even mention him there, which is interesting because I didn't have Gunnar on my list. So Diego still, you could consider him for this as well, but I want to double dip. How about Ahmad Hardy, Mizzou?
Yeah.
I mean, he's been outstanding. Very well could make the case for him. I do have Trinidad. Fantastic what he did in Oxford. I even put Joey Aguilar in there, Steven, because he came in late. I think too many turnovers to be seriously considered as the winner here, but I think he did a lot, and he revitalized the Tennessee offense that many people, myself included, wondered as the SEC caught up to Josh Heupel. Sure as heck didn't look like it, not with Joey Aguilar back there. Taylor Green, I know he made a lot of mistakes too, but I think he was getting killed. I think he was banged up. I think he literally had the pressure of the entire program to basically score every possession. Otherwise, you're going to lose. And of course, they did lose 10 in a row. But give me Kewan Lacey, Ole Miss, outstanding running back. I think he's the winner. SEC Offensive Player of the Year. He was the missing piece for that program last year. Probably would have. I know they would have made the playoff with him, and I think they may have even won the whole thing if they had a running back of his caliber last season. So I believe he shattered the Ole Miss rushing record for touchdowns in a single season this year. Give me Kewan Lacey.
I like that pick. So I think you're absolutely spot on about Ole Miss last season, because I think about the short yardage things and troubles they had at times. And I think, man, if they just had an explosive running back, that team would have made the playoff and probably would have made a lot of noise in it. So I love that call, Mike, because he made such a big difference in the run game. And also we've seen this time in and time out with Kiffin's teams. they score points, but it all comes back to just simply running the ball. And Lacey getting over 1,000 yards and 20 touchdowns was a prolific season. So tip of the cap. Like I said, I went with Gunner, but I could be convinced on a lot of different directions here.
And I want to highlight a comment here. This is why we can't just look at the box scores. And we gotta go a little bit deeper. Noah, shout out Noah. We appreciate you being a cousin, Noah. He says Hardy had like 50 yards against Oklahoma, which is accurate. 17 carries, 57 yards. But I was listening to There's No One Better than Mr. Cole Kublik. And I was listening to his breakdown of that game. He said this is the most impressive 57-yard performance he's literally seen in his life, because the guy was they couldn't block him. And it was like running against a damn brick wall. And if you want to go try to run for 57 yards on a brick wall, good luck, because the brick wall is going to win. Oklahoma won that day. But again, you got to, he's not a damn Superman. You know what I mean? Like, if you're literally getting devastated when you touch the ball, it's hard to gain yardage. So we got to go a little bit deeper in our analysis than looking at stats, in my opinion.
Also, Mike, I think Lacey had 78 yards on like 27 attempts against Oklahoma. I mean, how many running backs actually had success against Oklahoma this year? Not many of them. So I totally understand, like, how do you deliver like in the big moments? I think, can shape some of these awards and where these guys fall. But I think, like you said, with Hardy, there weren't many rushing lanes in that game. And so his performance in that game was pretty impressive, all things considered. Certainly, I think he will be first, second team All-American this year. Hardy, I think he's got to be, outside of Jeremiah Love, one of the most productive running backs in the country.
Mm-hmm. All right. How about defensive player of the year? Steven, kind of curious to see where you go with this one.
Does this feel pretty open to you?
I got 3 Sooners on the candidates just to give you an idea, but yes, very open here.
I went with Cassius Howe, and I also considered Mansour Delane from LSU, the cornerback, but also like R. Mason Thomas, Damon Wilson, TJ Allen. The list goes on. There's a lot of good defenders. Was hard to necessarily find the one like standout point that made me go, that guy deserves the award. But I love good pass rushers, and Howe had 27 quarterback hurries, 11 and a half sacks, 14 tackles for a loss. One of the top edge rushers in the nation, up for all the defensive awards. So I went with Cassius Howe, but Mike, like offensive MVP, I think you could make a case for a couple guys here.
Yeah, and like I said, I had a bunch of Sooners. I had R. Mason Thomas. I had Kip Lewis. I had Cassius Howe. I think I would even put Colin Simmons there. Mansour Delane. And one guy, I shouted this guy out recently during a show with Shane, because I think from where he was like a national laughingstock to, I think, one of the most dominant players in the SEC. That's quite a leap to make. But Bray Hubbard for Alabama, I thought he came a long, long way. But call me crazy, Steven, and maybe I am. Again, I'm not a stat whore. I'm looking at guys that are disruptive, that are making plays, that are just elevating the team, and when the team needs a play, seemed like this guy was all over the field. How about Taylor Wine, Oklahoma? He's my defensive player of the year, and maybe that's not the best answer, and maybe insert him on another team, and maybe he could be double covered and he wouldn't be so impactful, but that guy was a freaking animal and was just made play after play after play all season long for Oklahoma. So I think he is outstanding.
Yeah, he came up big. What was it against like Texas with 3 tackles for a loss, 14, I think, for the entire season. Mike, I think it's a good thing for Oklahoma. They have like R. Mason Thomas, Wine, they've got David Stone, they've got Halton, like they've got so many good and talented dudes on the front. It's almost like it's hard for probably one of them to get the national recognition they deserve because they have so many good ones, and that's a good problem to have. Hence another reason why their defense could carry them a long way. So I like the call, a little bit off the board from the favorites, but I think given how good Oklahoma's defense was, it makes total sense to pick somebody from that group this year.
And it could have been our Mason Thomas too, but again, fair or not, it's hard for me to give it to players that miss time. And again, it's not his fault that he got banged up, but I like to reward availability as well.
Yeah, missing those last couple games and also the depth probably may hurt him to some extent because they won while missing him and got to the playoffs. So not a knock on him. I think he's probably the player with the most upside had he played all 12 games for SEC Defensive Player of the Year.
All right, how about this one, Steven? Now, this one I actually kind of like switched today. I've been thinking about this a lot. But SEC Coach of the Year, who would you give that to?
I am going with Clark Lee at Vanderbilt. And I think this is kind of just a culmination of where this team ended up. That they were picked probably just to go to a bowl game in the preseason by most people. And they finished on the doorstep of getting to the college football playoff. Best season in school history. You could argue they could be in the playoff. They are thriving in the new era of college football. So Clark Lee has brought Vanderbilt a long way in a couple years. Not a career achievement award, but I think this year 10-2 is worthy of Coach of the Year.
Yeah, no doubt. I would have no problem if you want to name Clark Lee Coach of the Year. He's on my list. Coach Elko, also on my list, Stephen. I think he may very well win it, but I think he would have for sure won it if they beat Texas.
Agree.
That was a tough one to again, no one cares if you go on a run here in the playoff. That will be forgotten. But it's hard for me to give you Coach of the Year when you lose to your rival in a somewhat lopsided fashion. Oklahoma, I think Brett Venables deserves serious consideration. He's basically my number 2 for Coach of the Year. But I'm gonna again. I'm usually not this guy, Stephen.
Hugh Freeze. Oh no.
I like to reward the teams that come out of nowhere, but I'm gonna give it to Kirby Smart. 12-1. I thought about halfway through, I was like, "There's no shot they can keep this up." They're living life on the edge. I thought that I picked them to lose Auburn. I was feeling pretty good about it. I think Jackson Arnold still scored, but again, even games like that were tight. I picked against a Mississippi State because I just figured at some point this is going to catch up to them, but they went the opposite way. It got better and better and better, and now they're on a heater going into the college football playoff. I think sometimes we never reward these guys because we expect so much from them. I'm giving Kirby Coach of the Year.
I think you said something there that's really important when it comes to awards is like the best coaches often don't win the Coach of the Year awards. It usually goes to those guys in the second tier who may have elevated or just exceeded expectations, which kind of overshadows the season that Kirby's had. Like you said, I mean, the in-season development, like the way they hit the accelerator once they got to November to develop into this team that could win a national championship, overcoming those close wins after close wins to kind of become more of a dominant team. I think they did a heck of a coaching job. And Mike, I mean, even go back to the offseason. Think about how much they lost and how big a turnover. We talked about it all offseason. They've got more turnover than usual, more question marks. Here they are, third in the country, and with a chance to win it all.
Yeah, a heck of a job. All right, how about worst coach of the year? An award that many people shall not hand out, but we will always do it, Stephen, and I will call this award from here on out the Hugh Freeze Award. Who's winning it?
Can we hyphenate that award? The Freeze Morris Award, like they do in the Big Ten?
I actually think Hugh Freeze is worse because he had a roster that should have been competing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the bare minimum just getting to a bowl game this year, but of course he couldn't even do that or put together an offense, which was his specialty. Mike, unfortunately, there are almost so many good candidates here. The fact that I know that his namesake is on the award, you could give it to him. But I kind of had to go Mike, with your guy, Sunbelt Billy. He squandered this Florida team. He just needed more time. What? No, I know DJ Lagway was hurt, but go out and get a quarterback in the portal to give yourself some insurance. They had a roster they had developed over a couple years that should not have been 4-8. They were way better than this given the personnel. Yes, they salvaged it by beating Florida State. They had too much talent. They wasted this season under Billy Napier. Mike, I could have gone with Mike Shula. I could have gone with Brian Kelly. I could have gone with Hugh Freeze. I could have gone with Coleman Hutzler. Unfortunately, Mike, there are several choices here.
Right. Well, I can't call this the Hugh Freeze Award and not give it to the man. So shout out Hugh. You finally won something. 9 out of 10. Hell, 10 out of 10. You get this award in my book. Shout out Hugh Freeze. Hopefully you don't get any of these jobs because you'll ruin those programs too. But yeah, I'm seeing it in the comments. Honorable mention to Lane Quinton, who walked away from his team, and it was a huge distraction the final month of the season. I mean, he tried everything in his power to derail the Ole Miss machine. He couldn't do it. So, honorable mention, Lane Quinton.
Is it a little concerning that we have so many candidates for this award? I mean, normally it's like you want one or two, and it's obvious. We've got like 5 or 6 that are good and potential winners here. This is very concerning. What about Mark Stoops, Bush Hamden? I mean, we had some other choices here.
There was a lot of choices for this one, no doubt. How about offensive coordinator of the year? Who would that be in your book, Stephen?
I had 3 names that I considered probably more than others: Mike Bobo, Collin Klein, and I went with Tim Beck of Vanderbilt. They averaged 27 points a game last year. They went up to 39. So they were even better in their second trip through the SEC, second in the country in offensive success rate. So you could go with a couple guys here. I went with Tim Beck.
Wow, that's you're reading off my list here, Stephen. I had 3 names written down. Bobo, shout out. I think he did a phenomenal job. Collin Klein, but I also have Tim Beck as your offensive coordinator of the year in the SEC. Remarkable job and fascinated. Hopefully, fingers crossed, he stays. You know, I don't know that he's leaving or anything, but I would love to see what he's able to do post Diego Pavia. Now that he'll have Jared Curtis to work with to further develop, and I would imagine that's going to be the thought of that is going to be very exciting for Tim Beck. So hopefully they see it out and are there for a couple years, because the best may be yet to come.
Yeah, 100%, Mike. I mean, I think if you're Vanderbilt, you got to feel really good about kind of the overall like organizational structure to be able to have a guy like Tim Beck with that experience. And, I think he could be a head coach somewhere, but the extra resources that you give Clark Lee can help keep someone like that around, and to be able to work with a quarterback like Pavia and turn him into a potential Heisman winner. Now you get a 5-star freshman, man, that's going to be a fun kind of laboratory at Vanderbilt the next couple of years.
All right. How about defensive coordinator of the year?
Is Brent Venables eligible for this award?
Well, he's on my list, so I guess so.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do with him.
I didn't either, Mike. I kind of went with a true defensive coordinator here. My pick may surprise you a little bit. I considered Womack. I think you could consider like Durkin, Batoon, a handful of names here. But with Elko and Venables and, coaching the defense, I wanted to make sure to give it to a true DC. I went with Blake Baker. And I know that may seem a little odd. I just think given the offensive issues that they had to hold teams under 19 points a game, they were 11th in the country in defensive success rate, a lot of new pieces, a lot of turnover transfers this offseason. They blended them all together and they thrived. So maybe a little different. I just thought that he did a nice job this year.
Yeah, and I think I would give this certainly to Brent Venables, just how outstanding the defense is. But like you, I wanted to honor a true coordinator, but even this is cheating a little bit because he became interim. But I'll give it to DJ Durkin for basically keeping the program afloat. It didn't get offense versus defense. It was just outstanding performance by one unit with dreadful performance on the other side of the football. I mean, that's that's even more difficult to maintain. Yet they maintained it through. Aside from the Vanderbilt game, I think seemingly every game, they had a borderline elite defense. So I'm gonna give it to DJ Durkin.
Do you think was Baker on your list at all?
Yeah, I mean, because they did a phenomenal job as well, but I don't know that I would quite give it to him. Just how bad overall the team. Well, I mean, maybe that's a sorry excuse because Auburn was even worse. But given the resources that LSU had to work with, yeah, I guess to your point, I think he should have been on my list.
I think if we were just doing play caller, like Venables is probably like a slam dunk, but it's also, like you said, trying to give it to like a true DC. Also worth noting how much better Auburn got once Durkin moved into the head coach role. They nearly beat Vanderbilt. They nearly beat Alabama. So I know we're only grading on defense, but certainly did a fine job on that side of the ball. And then in the interim role as head coach.
All right. And then I tried to stump Steven a little bit here, but I wanted to throw his way an outstanding individual performance. Does anything stand out when I say that? Outstanding individual performance could be any player, any situation. Anything stand out to you?
I was gonna go. I feel like I'm just picking Vanderbilt here, but I was gonna pick like Diego Pavia and kind of pick whichever, like whether it was the Auburn game, whether it was the Tennessee game. Delivering in the clutch there for Pavia and Vanderbilt's offense. So there's a number of ways we could have gone here. I think about like Gunnar Stockton's late completion to beat Tennessee, Marcel Reed's throw to beat Notre Dame late in that game with a touchdown. So I went with Pavia just because he's in the mix to win the Heisman. Clutch moments late in the season, those big performances.
All right, I would have never done this if Shane was here because he does not respect this position, Stephen. But how about Tate Sandell against Tennessee? Longest kick. I think he had 2 of the longest kicks in Neyland Stadium history. He was getting mocked for his short shorts. Now people are calling him out the best player for Oklahoma, which that's laughable given their defense. But I mean, again, he is an All-American. I think he's the best kicker in the country, and I think that was the moment Oklahoma started to believe they could do something special, and they've gone on, of course, to make the college football playoff. So, give me Tate Sandell. I think that was just such an outstanding individual performance.
Man, I like that call. Now I'm like jealous. I picked like something too obvious. I feel like I needed to go a little deeper in the weeds. Was there any others that you had on your radar outside of Sandell?
Well, I have a outstanding coaching moment as well, if that counts. But I was going to honor Kirby Smart for his onside kick against Texas. Because I feel like that was a backbreaker for Texas. Yeah. And that was another one where I think Georgia started to believe, where they, again, I think they were believing already, but it was almost like there's a new Saban in town with Saban with his kick against Clemson, so that one really stood out to me as well.
Man, a lot of love for the clapper tonight too.
The Clapper of the Year award. We didn't do that one.
Yeah. I got an individual coaching performance that I'll throw at you. How about the guy that is known for being Mr. DeBoring, going for it on 4th and goal to beat Auburn in the Iron Bowl, SEC championship, college football playoff, going for it on 4th and goal when I think they probably should just kick the field goal. I went with Kalen DeBoer in that category. And Mike, I should say, I believe I did vote for Tate Sandell to win the Groza. So
there you go. Yeah, I would disagree with you on your outstanding coaching moment because, again, I mean, it worked out. He'll go down in infamy, Iron Bowl history. Remember that 4th down they went? I still don't understand it. Kick the field goal. I guess Auburn could have drove the length of the field and beaten you, but would they have? I'm not buying it. I'm still confounded that why he did that.
They did get close though until that late fumble.
Right.
So I probably think Alabama's defense would have got a stop there. But yeah, take the points and get to try to not have the risk of not getting the ball back and losing like at a last second field goal too.
And we could have also highlighted A&M second half performance against Carolina. Not panicking. That's more of a team, but second half completely dominant. They had everything had to go right, and it's a credit to them. They got it done. But man, it's still hard to believe they came back and won that Carolina game 31-30.
Oh man, it is. I just think back to that Saturday watching that game and thought, man, everything went so wrong in the first half. And for everything to almost go all the way right in the second half, it was just such a kind of a crazy tale of two halves kind of game. It looked like they're going to lose that game, then they could lose Texas, and all of a sudden 10-2, and some of that doubt creeps back in. But credit to Texas A&M for rallying, because that was massive for their hopes of being a potential playoff team in the quarters or semis.
All right, Stephen, now I asked you this as well, to be prepared for a team that exceeded expectations the most. And I want this to be a personal thing, where which team maybe exceeded your expectations the most in the SEC this year?
I think the team that exceeded expectations probably overall is Vanderbilt. The fact that their win total was like 5.5 and they won 10. I thought they'd be better than that, the 5.5, but I didn't see 10 wins. I'll be honest, Mike, I think the team that probably surprised me, like just in terms of like a personal thing, I just didn't see Oklahoma getting to the playoff with that schedule. I thought they were going to fall like 8-4. It'd be a good year. The program would be back on track. I just didn't see college football playoff. So I think in terms of just what I'm surprised the most about, it's probably Oklahoma getting to the playoff given that schedule.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. The team I went with, though, Stephen, I went with Ole Miss.
Yeah,
because I thought they'd be 8-4, 9-3, and I know 11-1 is not significantly better than that, but I thought even if they got to 8 or 9, it would be because the schedule was manageable. Yet this was a team that I think will go down in history, a very special team, and we'll see what they do in the playoff. But I think there's a realistic shot they go deep into the field. I'm stunned that Ole Miss, after not making the playoff last year, when I guaranteed they would. I basically guaranteed they couldn't this year, and they did it. So maybe just don't listen to me, but that's the one for me.
Mike, I like that call too because of just the expectation that you lose Jackson Dart, you lose Walter Nolan, you lose all those key pieces, and we know transfers. Sometimes they work out right away. Sometimes they take half a season, they take a year, and the schedule was pretty favorable. But I would say a lot of people, including myself, didn't think they'd get there given those losses. So to come back a year later and to get that, they're also in that conversation with Oklahoma. It is kind of funny. We did have that preseason conversation of how things tend to happen a year after the year. And look what happened at Ole Miss in the college football playoff a year after we thought they would.
So you're telling me next year's Texas year. Okay, speaking of that, most disappointing team, Stephen, is it Texas or is there another one?
Mike, I actually wrestled with this one. It's not to absolve myself of a poor prediction for picking Texas at number 1, but I did land on Texas eventually. I will throw out that I do think South Carolina, you could argue, is more disappointing or underachieving, largely because Texas is still 9-3. They were on the doorstep of making the playoff. They beat Texas A&M. They lost to Ohio State by 7. Like, it's not as bad as South Carolina going 4 wins with their only SEC win being Kentucky when they had these aspirations of at least being a top 25 team after getting so close to the playoff last year. So I think it's easy. You have to pick Texas considering they're number 1, but I think you could actually make a pretty strong case for South Carolina.
Well, I'm going to make a case for old Billy in the Gators.
Right.
Come on. We try to hype him up all year, or all off season, excuse me. And man, we even saw glimmers of it against Texas. And even in losses like A&M, I thought they looked good for a good portion of that game. Even Ole Miss, Georgia, but close is how you get fired. And Billy got fired because he didn't even really get that close, to be honest with you. But there was a lot of talent on this team. Didn't get it done. For me personally, this was the biggest disappointment in the Southeastern Conference this year.
Would you rank it Florida, then Texas, or did you have somebody else after Florida?
I think after Florida would have been maybe Arkansas even.
Interesting.
I mean, I didn't really have high hopes. I thought they'd go about 4 or 5 wins, but they were awful. LSU in that mix, I didn't buy into the LSU hype. I didn't think they'd be a playoff team, but I thought they'd be a heck of a lot closer than 7-5. I was terrified Auburn would be good after all my Hugh Freeze talk, but he did worse than I anticipated. So that's and I was thinking 6-6. So that let that be a lesson to us all. You can't underestimate Hugh Freeze enough. You know what,
Mike? I would say it's probably also a good thing that Memphis hired a coach, Charles Huff, just on the case that somebody who's got some ties to the area was available. So thank goodness Memphis didn't give me a heart attack by hiring Hugh Freeze.
All right, and then how about best offensive line in the SEC, Stephen? I got a couple candidates. Where'd you go with this one?
Mike, I went with Texas A&M. Joe Moore, semifinalist here. They allowed the fewest sacks in the conference with 12, second in the SEC in rushing offense. Suspect they're probably going to have some dudes selected on the All-Conference and All-America team at the end of the year. So Texas A&M was my pick.
Yeah, I think that's exactly where I went as well, Stephen. I thought Georgia deserved some consideration. They got better. I think Vanderbilt, I think their offensive line is criminally underrated and a big key to their success on the offense. And Tennessee, I also considered, but for me, it was kind of easy. I went with Texas A&M as well.
Yeah, Tennessee, nice. Given all the personnel turnover, I thought they had a nice season too. So, and also Missouri's offensive line was very good at run blocking too, clearing the way for Ahmad Hardy, and of course Hardy's ability to break tackles helped with that too. So, yeah, those I had Georgia and Vanderbilt probably as my next two after Texas A&M.
Well, this one may be the easiest one on the board, Stephen. How about defensive line? Who was the best in the Southeastern Conference this year?
Mike, it was Oklahoma, no doubt about it. Like we said earlier, they lost our Mason Thomas and they kept the pressure up on opposing quarterbacks. They tied for the SEC lead with 41 sacks. They got good edge rushers. They got good defensive tackles. This group can carry the Sooners potentially a long way in the playoff.
Yeah, no doubt. That's the answer. But I also want to just give some consideration to Texas. I thought they were pretty solid. Auburn as well. I think Missouri had the most underrated defensive front in the conference, so they'd be in my probably number 2, but it's a wide gap between 2 and 1 because I'm giving it to Oklahoma every day and twice on Saturday.
I thought Georgia's defensive line also played better as the season went on. Is that fair?
I think so, but it wasn't there at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
But yeah, they certainly got better and better, and they're peaking at the right time, which is that's all you can ask for a playoff team. You know what?
Yeah, I think they're first in the SEC in rushing defense now. Certainly holding Alabama to negative rushing yards helps. The pressure was a little bit better down the stretch. So not even in the same conversation as Oklahoma. It is a very clear Oklahoma 1, and then everybody else is fighting for 2.
And then I wanted to kind of reward the fans here a little bit, Stephen. Best home field advantage in the SEC. I'm just kind of curious to see if you will be anywhere near where I went with this one.
Yeah, I wrestled to this one. I had 3 or 4 candidates on my list. One of them was Ole Miss. They were 8-0 at home this year. They had big wins over Tulane and LSU. And then I thought the head coach kind of insulted the fan base against Citadel, so I can't give it to them, right?
Right.
So I went with Texas A&M. They were 7-0 at home. Loved the way the crowd was still in it in the second half against South Carolina. Yes, their biggest win came on the road to Notre Dame. I also consider Texas. I mean, they did beat A&M and Vanderbilt at home 6-0 this season for the Longhorns.
Okay, so you did different than I, Stephen, and I don't fault you for it. Because I looked at it and I said, yeah, A&M for sure. They're up there. Now call me crazy, Stephen. Again, I don't think the team was good. I don't know what. Maybe these people have haunted me for so long. I'm trying to like get on their good graces or something. I don't know, but I'm giving it to Florida, Stephen.
Okay.
And then I was like, oh, they lost to South Florida. How can this be elite? Again, that's the team that sucked. They showed up for Texas. I think they helped win them the Texas game. Mississippi State as well with that horrible late pick. And then we got to fire Billy going. They fired Billy right after that. Even Tennessee, where they got steamrolled, it was a sellout. And then what clinched it for me, Stephen, not that they really beat Florida State, who cares, but that was a sellout, and that these fans selling out this stadium at 3-8 to go watch a horrible team play football, and they still showed up, and they still made it a rowdy environment. Give me Florida. I think that was the best home field fans in the SEC.
Passionate despite all of the bad play in the field. Yeah, definitely a tip of the cap to Florida this year. Let me throw you one out there. It may surprise you. What about Mississippi State? The great atmosphere against Arizona State. I thought their fans obviously showed up against Tennessee, Texas, obviously the Egg Bowl. Not saying they're in contention for one, but man, that was a great atmosphere against Arizona State. Then you had those other high-profile matchups where they took them to overtime. I think Starkville and those Mississippi State fans showed up. Is that fair?
Absolutely, especially coming off the 2-10 season. Giving their program an advantage at home. I don't know how many programs in this conference would support their team to that level after a 2-10. And what was the over/under? Wasn't it 3.5?
Yeah,
yet they showed up. So those are some damn good fans down there in Starkville.
Yeah, 100%. This was a hard call because you could look at like Vanderbilt too and say that game against Missouri. You had Alabama, Vanderbilt, and Tennessee, big wins at home. Like there's a couple different paths here, and even Georgia because they had the wins over Ole Miss and Texas, but they also lost to Alabama. So it feels like there's a lot of different reasons or ways you could go with this answer.
All right, and then how about the best road team? I got a couple candidates here, but who would you say was the best road team in the SEC this year?
Mike, I am going. They have a schooner after all. I'm going with Oklahoma because they won at South Carolina, they won at Tennessee, and they won at Alabama. Very close call in my mind with Texas A&M because that big win over Notre Dame on the road.
Yeah, I have no fault with either one of those, Stephen. I also considered Georgia winning at Tennessee, at Auburn, and at Mississippi State. I also considered Alabama, Stephen, winning at Georgia, at Mizzou, at Carolina, and at Auburn, but could not overlook that Florida State performance. So,
yeah,
I'm right there with you. I think you got to give it to Oklahoma, the Road Warriors, and that's the only disadvantage of home game in the playoff. It's almost like you'd rather play on the road, given how they looked on the road this year.
Yeah, I mean, the Alabama thing is when I looked at the results this year, and like you said, the win over Georgia was huge. I think about that Missouri game, the crowd against South Carolina, the atmosphere that day at Williams-Brice was unbelievable. But I just kept coming back to that Florida State game and say I can't give it to Alabama because of that game. But the Oklahoma, the way they went on the road, and of course the way they closed the door against LSU in the last week of the season, I think gives me some confidence that they will fare just fine in that game against Alabama in a few weeks.
And again, I hate to keep harping on it because I'm sure their fans are don't want to hear about it, but had A&M won at Texas, they would have been a slam dunk winner, I think.
Yes, I think so too, because of that win over Notre Dame, and you add the win potentially over Texas. You're talking about beating two top 15 teams on the road. They would have been number one for me too.
All right, I believe that's all the awards I sent you. I'm just kind of curious if there's anyone else you wanted to shout out.
Mike, I think we kind of covered the. I mean, I guess I should say like special teams. Like we should give a shout out to Tate Sandell because he was so good at like long field goals. I mentioned voting for him for the Groza Award this year. I think he is very deserving and certainly think he should probably win the award. That would probably like the only other award I was going to throw out there was something for special teams, or was there some other like underrated performance this year that we maybe didn't cover that we should give a shout out to?
I was just thinking maybe Texas punt returner that Niblett, who Sarkisian may be fired if he didn't have that guy on his team this year. You know what?
Yes, Texas is probably 7-5 without him.
But I also wanted to shout out some of these amazing cousins like All Day Trey, Steven, All Day Gifted. I have it here somewhere. The Sparky Watts, cool name. Steven Up, the legend. We love all Stevens on this channel. Steven Up has got his own tune here.
Always showing up for them boys in Tuscaloosa. It's Steven Up. Roll Tide.
He gifted Senior Josh and then JR, another one of our resident legends. He gifted
The legend, Cousin JR, has done it again.
Michael McKaylee, hope I didn't butcher that too bad. And then Junior gifted Rick Freeman. Thank you, Junior. And then Bulldog, Mississippi, he gifted 5 cousins. Steven, I'll figure this out eventually. David S., Killers, Fur Sphere, Kyle Norman, Arkansas Vold, and Travis 772. All of the new cousins, welcome to
the family.
Yeah, thank you, Steven, and thank you for all the cousins for hanging out this football season. Anything else, Steven, before we hop off the line?
Mike, the regular season is over, but man, I can't wait for the playoff. It feels like we're just getting started to see how crazy this gets. So, man, it's always kind of sad we get to the end of the season and we had those jam-packed Saturdays. We still got bowl games, we got playoff, we got transfer stuff. We're gonna be busy, right?
Oh yeah, no doubt. I was just thinking. I mean, just when this is going to start to settle, Steven, there'll be the transfer portal, and before you know it, spring football. So we're not going anywhere. Just slowing down a little bit here because we may not survive if we keep up at this pace for another week or two. But we're going to be here to cover each and everything that we can. Any emergency pods, stay locked in on the channel. That's a great way. Turn on notifications so that you know when we go live that you will be notified. So if you share, like, all that really helps us out. Shout out JP. Today's shout outs All Day Trey, Steven Up, Howdy, and Saw Off, Cousin JR, Michael Dunlap, Junior, Shin, Token, and Bulldog Mississippi. Thank you. And thank you, JP. We will catch you on the next one.
Hey, buddy, this beer's for you, Mike, and Cousin Shane. That SEC podcast loves the Pirate, and the Pirate loves that SEC podcast. Hail State.